Hello, my friend, and welcome back to Above Par. I hope you're doing well. So, I'm excited to talk to you today because I want to teach you how to quit, how to quit really well, how to quit effectively in golf. That doesn't sound like a very good idea. You're like, what is she talking about? So many times I get people who are so frustrated with their game or so feel like they're at the end of their rope, so to speak, that they just come up to me, they're like going, you know what? I'm quitting. I'm not playing again. I've been there. I've totally have told myself that I'm quitting this game multiple times. Like that's kind of the running joke. Like quit golf like 52 times. Right? But we keep coming back and picking it back up and we recommit. And then we have that feeling of frustration and despair. And then we quit. And then we recommit. I cannot say that. We recommit. And then we get frustrated. And then we quit. And we keep training our brain this little vicious cycle where it just thinks this is the pattern. This is what we do. We commit, we get frustrated, we quit, right? And then we recommit. We're going to work on that word, right? So it's really important to start noticing that habit if it's showing up for you. And I'm going to show you different ways that you quit on yourself that you might not even know. They can be subtle in golf. And they're ways that we get relief and we give ourselves a break. And really, what we're doing is we're quitting on our growth and on getting better faster. Right. So I want to talk to you today about why we quit, different ways that it shows up on the golf course, and things that you can do to help yourself break the habit of quitting and to recommit to the game. Right. So in golf, you're either interested in getting better or you're committed. And when you're committed, there is no quitting. There is no failing because you're committed and you're not going to fail and you're not going to quit. You're just going to keep going until you figure it out. It's just not an option. When you commit, you take quitting out of the equation and you take worrying about failure out of the equation as well. So as my coach, Brooke Steele, has said, quitting is a habit and justifying it is a skill, right? We get really good at justifying why we're quitting. And the reason that we quit is important for you to understand. It comes from the back of our brain, from our primitive brain. Our primitive brain is always trying to keep us safe. It's always trying to conserve energy, keep us safe. It wants to tell you to not do things. It's always going to tell you that things are a bad idea, that you're going to be in danger or there's going to be pain involved. And it's going to tell you just to go home and watch Netflix and get underneath the covers and eat popcorn, right? That is what your brain wants to tell you to do all the time. We're kind of fighting that part of our brain. And the reason that we're fighting it is because your brain wants to give you some relief from some discomfort that you're having. A lot of it really stems from an intolerance of being uncomfortable. We're just, as people, not very tolerant of it, right? We just want to be comfortable all the time. We don't want to experience anything that is negative or that is hard or that is challenging, right? We want to take that path to something that is much easier and more pleasurable to do. But when we do that, we never really grow. We never push ourselves to that other side. We're always going to stay in the same spot if we're not willing to go through that discomfort. I coach people on this all the time. It's your willingness to be uncomfortable, that little path of misery that you have to go through to get to the next side. And the thing that happens is once we get there, then if we want to grow some more, we kind of have to be willing to be uncomfortable too, to get to that next spot. Otherwise, we're just going to stay in the same spot all the time. So with your golf game, just ask yourself, are you interested in playing golf? Are you committed to getting better? Are you committed to making improvements? Are you committed to playing at the level that you want to play at? Are you committed to winning tournaments or club championships or playing in college or playing professionally or just lowering your handicap? Or are you just interested in it? Because if you're interested in it and that's it, that's as far as it gets, it's so easy to quit. Because when you get uncomfortable, you do not have that commitment that is going to push you through that level of discomfort. You want to really use the front of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, where we think more clearly and really understand whether you like your reasons for doing it. Are you doing it because you're just not willing to be uncomfortable at this moment in time? Are you doing it because you're trying to avoid an emotion that you're not willing to experience? Right? Quitting is a false pleasure. It's a way that we get temporary relief, right? It's a short-term pleasure, and we give up that long-term pleasure of reaching our goals or achieving the things that we want to achieve because we want to have the pleasure at this moment in time. The first big way that we end up quitting is we quit on ourselves on the golf course, right? I call this that we get to that point where we have had a bunch of holes. Maybe we're grinding or working really hard. We want it so badly. And we have a stretch of holes that we don't do very well. And then we get a case of the I don't give a shits, right? If you know what I'm talking about, that's kind of the phrase, right? Where we're just like, forget it, right? I'm done. I give up. Right? We quit on ourselves at that moment because what's happening is that we're so uncomfortable. It's much easier to quit at that given moment in time than to grind it out and finish the round and still be very disappointed and feel like we failed, right? We give ourselves a pass. We're like, well, I quit. I didn't really try coming in. So therefore, yeah, of course I didn't play very well. Versus the story we have to tell ourselves, which is I grinded and I still played bad. I tried really hard and I still didn't score very well. I still messed up coming in on a couple holes and shots. We're not willing to experience that part of it. So it's just much easier to just give up on ourselves. Not learning how to work through that is what's making it hard to stay focused and committed the whole way through a round. Other ways that you can give up on yourself is maybe not practicing. You're like, well, I'm just not going to practice because if I practice and I'm still not very good, well, then I don't have an excuse. I don't have an out. Right. So I'm just not going to practice as hard. I get a lot of people who tell me this. I'm just not a practicer. I'm like, really? Then you're not very committed. Like, I don't know how you're going to get better if you don't practice. And that's okay. You just want to be honest with yourself. Listen, I'm just interested in playing good golf. I'm not really committed to playing good golf. So if you use practice as an excuse, like I don't want to practice, just be honest with yourself that you're just not very committed to getting better. And that's why you're not getting the results that you're seeing. Another one we can do is just not participating in events. So like I have a lot of people who are just like going, I'm not going to play with those people at that tournament, at that course. Right. So I'm kind of quitting ahead of time. I'm not going out and challenging myself and putting myself into situations where I'm going to have to push myself through some discomfort of playing with maybe some people that I don't want to play with, like people that maybe are better than I am, or that have this image of me being this really good golfer. And I don't feel like I'm really a very good golfer, or I don't want to go play that golf course because it's too hard. So I don't want to, score a big number. Right. Really, there's lots of hard golf courses out there with different conditions than maybe you normally play, like really super fast greens. So you sit there going, I don't want to play there. I don't want to have to, three putt a bunch of times or hit it in the rough and not be able to get out. So we quit. We don't go and challenge ourselves. So we quit ahead of time because we don't want to experience that feeling, what it's going to feel like to shoot a number that, is not going to make us feel very good. So another way that we quit is how we blame other people or situations. We don't take responsibility. It's like responsibility shifting, right? So yeah, I didn't play very well, but right, but the golf course wasn't in very good shape. But there were just the group that I played with was horrible. But the group in front of me was slow. You might blame the teacher. If someone played bad, it was always my fault. That's fine. I mean, I could take it, but it's like, but really what you're doing is you're quitting on yourself. You're shifting blame for why you played poorly. Could be you're shifting blame to different equipment. You can shift blame to your coach, your teacher, the golf course, people in your life, right? The conditions, people you played with. We shift blame. We don't take responsibility for why we played poorly. But the reason that you really didn't play very well is because you didn't have a very good job of managing your mind on the golf course. You weren't doing a very good job of managing your thoughts and emotions on the golf course. So it's so much easier to say, yeah, it's not me, it's them, right? The problem is someone else. That's never the case, right? You want to take responsibility for yourself. So you're quitting on yourself by not growing and learning and taking responsibility on how you can get better and manage all those thoughts and emotions. It's just so much easier for me to blame someone else. It feels better. It's their fault. It wasn't me. It feels bad if it's me. It feels so much better if it's Kathy. Right? It happens all the time. I'm like always good. Go ahead. You go ahead and blame me all you want. Right? But you're not taking the opportunity to grow. And just know what you're doing. So some of this might be me bringing it to your attention. You might be able to notice different times in your life where you've done that. I've done it plenty of times. I've caught myself for sure over the years, shifting my blame. It just feels better, right? Than having to own up to it. The other one that I alluded to was either you're interested or you're committed. So not being committed can show up in a lot of different ways. It could be that you just don't take lessons. You don't want to spend the money on lessons or coaching, right? You're not interested in pushing yourself or making changes because when we make changes, it's uncomfortable and we don't like to be uncomfortable, right? As we just like to stay where we are and not have to go and work through that discomfort, which happens a lot when we're changing our golf swing. There's tons of discomfort that comes with that. I always would tell my students when I'm teaching, I'm not selling you comfort. If I'm selling you comfort, you're going to stay the same. Right? You've got to be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable or you're not changing, right? Just not giving it 100%. I think when you're not giving it 100%, right? When you're giving yourself some passes, when you're giving yourself an out, when you're making excuses not to go practice or to play or to work on your game or to learn. Right? Or another one is you don't stick with anything long enough, right? So you make a swing change and you give up on it. And then you switch to the next little shiny object, right? You never stick with anything long enough because you don't want the reason for it's not working to be you. It's so much easier to just give up on that and then shift to the next thing. But you're really not giving it a chance really to figure out if it actually is that technique, right? Or if it's you, because if it's you, well, that doesn't feel very good, right? Some other things that we can do on the golf course that are ways that we kind of quit on ourselves are we can roll our ball out of a divot. Right? So we never have to hit it out of a bad lie, right? Why do we do that? Right? We're really technically not challenging ourselves. Now, listen, if you're not interested in getting better in the game, I'm totally fine, right? If you're a brand new golfer, you're probably not listening to this podcast, but yeah, sure. I don't think you should hit it out of a buried lie in a fairway bunker as a beginning golfer, right? But if you're committed to learning and growing and being uncomfortable, why do you always have to give yourself a good lie? Right? And the reason is we want to feel good, right? By hitting a good lie. We don't want to have to either put up a bad score, put ourselves in a bad position after mishitting a shot. We don't want that feeling, right? So we're taking relief from that right away. We're teeing our ball up. You might not keep an accurate score, right? You might fudge numbers a little bit. Right? When people do this is just them getting relief. They're quitting on themselves for sure. It's a mini quit on themselves, but they're just trying to get a little bit of relief because it just feels better to shoot this number than another number. So I'm just going to fudge on the score, right? I'm going to tell you that I got a 6 when I really got a 7, right? Granted, yes, it's cheating, but if you've done that for sure, like people know. You might give yourself putts. This is a huge one, right? That's good. That's good, right? That putt's good. 3-footer's good. 4-footer's good, right? You're not going to finish them out. Right? Why don't you do that? Right? Because if you miss, it's just going to feel crappy. Right? So it's just much easier for me to sit there and go, yeah, I gave it to myself. It's good. Only playing in nice weather could be another one, right? So you're never going to challenge yourself to play in a windy condition or a rainy condition because you don't want to score poorly or you don't want to play poorly. You don't want to struggle. You don't want to be uncomfortable. But when you do that, you're not challenging yourself to take your game to the next level. You're giving yourself a little bit of an out. You're giving yourself some relief. So you could probably come up with a lot of other areas or different ways on the golf course that you can see where you give yourself a little bit pass besides rolling the ball over, fixing your lie, or giving yourself putts, or only playing in certain conditions, right? These are little ways that we quit on ourselves, that we quit challenging ourselves. We give ourselves a pass because we're always looking to get relief now versus what the consequences would be if we hit them out of those different situations. Okay, so how do you break the habit of quitting? These little mini quits that I've mentioned in this podcast. The first thing is that you want to be aware that quitting is an action, and the action is always coming from an emotion that comes from a thought. So you want to be aware of the thoughts that you're saying, and there are certain thoughts that are conducive towards quitting that we might say to ourselves on the golf course. Right? Some of them might be that this is too hard. I'm not good enough. I suck. Everyone's better than me. Right? I never do something. I never hit these shots well. You might say, I don't know what I'm doing. Right? I'm never going to get this. Those thoughts create that feeling of despair and frustration, right? And defeated. And when we feel that way, we're going to take that action of quitting, right? That quitting always is coming from that emotion, and that emotion is always on the words that we're saying to ourselves. And if we're in the habit of saying these things to ourselves, then we're going to constantly be quitting, right, on ourselves and our golf game and not growing. And you want to understand that you're fighting your own primitive brain, right? When we say these things to ourselves, our brain's going to agree with us. You're right. It is too hard. Go home, right? Quit doing it. Quit, give up. So much easier. It's going to feel so much better if you give up than if you keep trying. Because if you keep trying, you're going to get really uncomfortable and you're going to have to experience a bunch of emotions that you don't want to experience, right? And that's why we give up. That's why we quit. Right? You got to be onto your brain, knowing that it's going to try and talk you out of it. You got to listen to the thoughts that you're saying to yourself that's creating those feelings of wanting to take the action of quitting. And then you want to break that habit loop of committing, feeling that despair, quitting, and then recommitting. Right? You want to quit that habit of saying, I'm quitting, right? After I play one more round, give up for a couple of days, and then come back to the game and start and get recommitted all over again, right? You want to break that habit. Your brain's onto it, right? It's like, this is fun. This is working for me. We've done it enough times, right? But it's not benefiting you. It's not benefiting your golf game. And it feels crappy because all you're really doing is giving yourself this short-term pleasure and you're foregoing where you really want to go with the golf game. All right. I hope that helped, my friends. I will talk to you next week. Hey, so if you like this podcast, you can talk to me live. All you need to do is sign up for a free mini session. I'd love to hear about you and your golf game and what you're working on. You can check the link in the description or go to kathyhartwood.com. Work with me. Hope to see you there.